I think what we have to learn is there is no totality, there is no absolute truth. There is diversity, there is ambiguity, how to deal with this huge amount of ambiguity in our world. And this is, I think, where, for me, the role of artists and art really come into the picture.
Gerfried Stocker is a media artist and an engineer for communication technology and has been artistic director and co-CEO of Ars Electronica since 1995. Ars Electronica was established in 1979 and for over 40 years has been Europe's largest festival for art, technology, and society. It's more than a festival. The platform also includes the Ars Electronica Center, the Museum of the Future, the Prix Ars Electronica Awards in Digital Art, the Futurelab Incubator, and much more to explore the questions about our future. Ars Electronica never asks what technology can or will be able to do, but always what it should do for us, which I greatly appreciate their human-centered approach. After stepping into his leadership role and as the guiding force behind Ars Electronica, Gerfried has led a talented team to revolutionize the center and Futurelab. His influence spans from directing international exhibition programming, leading significant expansion and content revitalization of the center, amplifying the festival's reach, to a thorough redesign of the center's interior and content. Gerfried is also a consultant for numerous companies and institutions in the field of creativity and innovation management and is active as a guest lecturer at international conferences and universities. The 2023 Ars Electronica Festival will take place September 6th through 10th in Linz, Austria. And in today's episode, you'll get to hear a fascinating conversation about its theme, Who Owns the Truth? Listen as Gerfried explores truth and reality, how we're building multiple and manufactured realities, and the importance of art to explore ambiguity to meet this moment in time. Enjoy.
But have you ever thought, what if this is all just a dream?
Welcome to Creativity Squared. Discover how creatives are collaborating with artificial intelligence in your inbox, on YouTube, and on your preferred podcast platform. Hi, I'm Helen Todd, your host, and I'm so excited to have you join the weekly conversations I'm having with amazing pioneers in the space. The intention of these conversations is to ignite our collective imagination at the intersection of AI and creativity to envision a world where artists thrive. Gerfried, it is so wonderful to have you on Creativity Squared. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me as well.
Yes, it's been a long time coming. I've heard about Ars Electronica for a long time through all my friends in Austria, and then also Reeps One, who was actually our first guest on Creativity Squared. I know he's been part of the festival before too, and I'm so excited. I actually get to go this year, which will
Great.
be my first time going. So I'm really excited.
Yes, I can promise you it will be a very exciting experience just because of the really exciting, big, and diverse community of people who are really deep into these questions and relations of technology, creativity, art, and science. And it's really every year. I mean, might sound strange when I promote this in this way, but it's also for us organizing this event. It's every year. It's really one of the most exciting things to be together with all these people. This enormous amount of ideas and excitement and inspiration that is happening throughout the festival. So I'm sure you will like it.
Oh, I can't wait. Well, and let's start. We'll get into like the history and the mission. But this year's, and you all have been in the AI and technology space for a long time, even though I feel like a lot of the mainstream consciousness about AI impacting our lives really happened last fall with the onset of Chat GPT. But let's dive into this year's festival theme, which I find really interesting. And it's all about who owns the truth. So, can you tell us a little bit about where that came from and why that's so top of mind for you and the organizers of the festival this year?
I think it's obvious. The main motivation to choose this theme was, of course, this huge explosion of our attention towards artificial intelligence, and in particular, of course, that with ChatGPT, the focus went so much on, whether these AI systems, in particular these large language models, whether they're really like, super magic truth machines, the next generation of super database, and you get just all the knowledge that you want, or whether they are something completely different. And I think this is still one of the big problems, that there is so much misconception about what's the nature of this technology and therefore what we can expect from it. And I think this really brings, of course, the discussion that started already with the beginning of the digital revolution, let's say 30, 40 years ago. It is bringing this now really to a new level and a new dimension. And this is, of course, this transformation that happens when things are getting digital. So when you have information and you convert it into this new state of aggregation. And I think this is what digital actually is. It's a new state of aggregation of information, and suddenly it really changes the rules, almost the laws under which information now suddenly can be worked with, can be accessed, has to be governed, and all this question. And one of the main things always is, of course, the moment things get digital, they lose their status of being unique and original, because digital automatically means endless numbers of copies of the same thing. And we have learned in the last decades, also in businesses, in industries, think about music industry in particular, how painful it was for them, how difficult it was for them to get along with these changes, that music no longer needs a physical thing like the vinyl or the CD, but it can be just everywhere at the same time. But after some time, I think, in particular, the music industry has coped very well, and we see these transformations in so many areas. And now it's happening, of course, on a next level with AI. And it's not only now the question of what is real in terms of physical existence, but now, of course, the big question: what is true? So reality also in terms of truth. And I think it's an interesting next level also of the discussion that we have since quite a while about fake, because fake always needs some real element that you can fake. So it always has to be related to some reality. But what AI now is enabling us is endless number of manufactured realities. So with the blink of an eye, you can create thousands, hundred thousands of different realities that you don't even have to make it up. So we don't need even, the fantasy of people to make up new fictions and realities. It's just the machines. And this is probably something that really will have a huge impact on so many areas besides all the industrial and business areas. But really, how do we deal with our concept of reality and truth? And we will have, for example, a big symposium with many experts where we speak about, or that is called, the end of truth. Are we now in this moment of time where we just, we get rid of truth because it's so much more exciting or whatsoever to just reinvent a reality every moment in time?
That's so fascinating, and I could already imagine people listening could feel maybe a little uncomfortable because truth has been such a bedrock of how we understand reality, and then to question it and have multiple realities, what does that mean for our understanding of
Yeah.
of how we just interact in the world? I find that really fascinating.
And I think this is, of course, when we talk about the impacts of AI, I think this is really one of the most frightening, because it's so difficult, almost impossible to really envision what the outcome will be. Because, of course, this understanding that there is a certain truth, and there is also somebody, some places, some institutions that represent authority of interpretation of truth. This is, of course, a very important scaffolding of social order, of the way how what we need as humans, as humanity, as societies. To live together, to organize our daily lives, to organize our businesses, and all these kind of things. And it might be, something that really could be maybe compared to the beginning of the Enlightenment, when suddenly this unquestioned authority of religion, of the church, who owned the truth, because what the church said, what religion said, this was the truth. Nobody was, even daring or thinking about the question. And then came more and more all this new knowledge from natural sciences. And Newton was understanding how gravity was working. Kepler was understanding how the planets were moving. Philosophers like Descartes also started to build upon these facts of science. They started to build a new perspective, a new image of our world, and also, of course, a new image of the position of humans in this world. And as much as we are, of course, I think still, I have to be really very grateful for these early scientists and the way how the scientific facts were able to replace the religious fiction. On the other side, this very mechanistic worldview has also contributed a lot to the big mess that we find ourselves now, with all this overarching industrialization and the idea that we can manage nature, that just with technology we can do everything. I mean, it's a great idea, and I'm a trained engineer myself, so I know how exciting it is to be able to work with technology and to do what you imagine. But of course, it also led to a very strong misalignment between humans and the planet, human and the nature. And this is something that we see at the moment as well. And I think maybe what's going on right now, even it doesn't seem to be so clear. It's in the hindsight, it looks quite easy to understand. Okay, there were first religion because we didn't understand the world. Then scientists made us understand the world, and we got also a new authority of truth and interpretation, which was, of course, science and still is science. But we see, of course, also since quite a while now, in particular, I think on a global scale, due to the COVID pandemics, that people more and more start to question science, and that it becomes almost fashionable to be skeptic about science. And I think this is really a very, very difficult thing, because, of course, it is a misunderstanding to see science in a way or as some authority that has the total absolute interpretation of truth. I think what we have to learn is there is no totality, there is no absolute truth. There is diversity, there is ambiguity, how to deal with this huge amount of ambiguity in our world. And this is, I think, where, for me, the role of artists and art really come into the picture. Because so far, everything could be negotiated between, I don't know, industry and politicians and things like this. But we see that we have to deal with phenomena that we are not used to deal with. We see that things are getting much more complex, that things turn out to be of a nature where a clear yes or no, black or white answer will not be possible at all, or definitely not sufficient in terms of helping us further. And of course, this is not new in humanity, in human society, in the thousands of years that we know about our history. But every time when these things became very important and strong, then we also see the upcoming of new philosophical, religious, spiritual dimensions. So I think lots of these conspiracy theories nowadays is also very much due to this lack of orientation that is going on. And then, of course, automatically you start, to look what is more appropriate, what fits better to your actual, your own situation, the way how you feel. And well, if it's nicely presented, why shouldn't you believe in things even if you might rationally be able to understand they are stupid, they cannot be true. But of course, the category of truth is changing as well. And so you see, this will be a big thing this year at the festival to discuss this whole issue.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. As you were speaking, it reminded me of a review of a TV show here in the States called Euphoria,
Mm-hmm.
which is super popular. I never got into it, but it's kind of this high school landscape, and it's not realistic at all, but it resonated with a ton of viewers as being emotionally true. Like the emotion that was conveyed in it held the truth. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of even Trump supporters that, he, you know, probably does not honor what most people would consider truth, but the emotional resonance of like what truth is, I think is interesting. So like the emotional component to truth, I think is an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah, I think this is super interesting, and in a certain way, I think it's a way to approach the world that we just cannot, get rid of. And there is a quality behind this. This is, I think, very much this process of taking more and more care of the role of individuals. A process that is also in parallel going on, of course, with a enormous growth of our awareness of the diversity on this planet. So it seems, some of these things are like side effects of something that I think is extremely good and important. I mean, the necessity was already so strong, the urge to really start to embrace the diversity and all these discussions of equality. Of course, on the other side, this can be wonderful, arguments just to say, okay, well, whatever I think, whatever I like to be true is true. And well, so far so good. But then again, I mean, besides all these possible interpretations of our reality, there is still a lot of hard facts. There is science, and science is something that is based on evidence. The science, true science, well done science, is anyway not claiming to own the truth, but it's extremely important and wonderful tool of humanity to investigate our life, to understand our life, to understand our world. And so when this, you know, conditionality, or I don't know what the right English term would be, but this kind of everything is possible because I like it at the moment. It fits my lifestyle at the moment. When this takes over, we might very easily come, to a society that is very easy to manipulate. Where, and this is, I think, what we see behind Trumpism, very strong. I mean, a society that is prepared for this, of course, can be easily manipulated, and that's unfortunately not only a phenomena in the United States. We see this on a global scale in different flavors. So I think again, this is now for me another point where art, art festivals, cultural events really have a kind of responsibility to go into these topics because we won't be able to solve this just with a clear yes or no decision. So we need to learn to deal with ambiguity, to be open to any possibility, but still to be very clear on, what's right or wrong. And even, talking about this makes me confused because which is of course the nature of ambiguity. I mean, we are so
Mm.
trained to say, at the end there will be always some right or wrong. There will be always some black and white. And probably art is one of the very few areas where there is space for ambiguity, where ambiguity even is maybe a source of the excitement of art. I mean, we know this, for example, from music. The tensions that are built up by harmonies and dissonances, and then how you solve a dissonance into harmony. I mean, and how you solve a ambiguity of harmonies into expected harmony. I mean, these are the moments when we say, "Oh, is this beautiful?" So uh, it's not just, the quality of art is not just in the beautiful result, it's in the way how we get to this moment of beauty. And the moment of beauty always goes through an experience of ambiguity. And I think this is a kind of practice that allows artistic environments in terms of, festivals, cultural institutions, people who are artists, who work artistically, that allows these spaces of artists to be more understanding for ambiguity and maybe find strategies, or strategy already sounds like, okay, this is exactly the way how to do it, but allows to gain experience with how to deal with ambiguity besides hitting each other. Because the usual way how humans deal with ambiguity is we start to fight. And we start to fight, we get angry and we hit each other and so on and so forth. So we need to find other ways to deal with it. And I think art can really help us there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I got to listen to Stephen Fry, and that's actually where I met Harry or Reeps One, was at this presentation from Stephen Fry, where one of the things that he said is that we really need artists to translate this moment in time, because if not, then you get more of the dystopian or the fear around it versus kind of what you were saying, playing with it and using it art as an exploratory thing of what does this technology mean to
Mhm.
us right now. So I love how, art can help
Yeah. Yeah.
guide
I
us
think
through this time
that
period.
that's really important, because we have, of course, fiction as one of the basic elements of art. This is what art is about. But the interesting thing is, in art we don't use fiction in terms of creating a final result or something final. Fiction in art is always used as a way of exploration. And I think that's the very big difference between fiction in all these, fake and faked realities, where in a manipulative way, in a populistic way, you create a fiction to give people an answer. But art creates fiction to allow people to express the right questions. And I think this is the very important point.
Yeah, I love that. And especially, in navigating what is real and what is not real, now that we have, deep fakes have been around, but cloning voices and AI manipulating images is just going to, I think, be more widespread. So understanding what you're looking at and consuming, understanding if it's real or not real, it's going to get very interesting. And even from, a legal evidence standpoint of photographs and video being like, this is evidence of truth, that's going to go out the window really quickly right now, as well as we enter this phase.
Yeah, I mean, this is again the point where it gets a little bit frightening, because I mean, we believe, and I think we live in a world, in a time where many people in our societies, due to a quite reasonable level of education, and of course it varies very much, even within wealthy and privileged countries like here Austria, we have of course big discrepancies between the well educated, and it's a very social difference, of course, and the people who don't have appropriate access to education. But nevertheless, I mean, it's in general on a very high level. So we tend to believe, and I think we live in a time and in a world where we can, as individuals, we can make proper decisions about what's true or not true, untrue. This is how we have been raised. And I think it worked for quite a long time, that if you were serious enough and you got your education and you got your senses together, you could quite easily find out the difference between a lie and the truth, the facts and the fiction, the manipulation and the reality. But of course, this is now getting away. It's like the carpet that is pulled out under our feet. Not even a very well educated person is already now, and will even more so in the future, when these tools become more and more perfect, be able to tell the difference between truth and reality. And it will be not just not possible to look at the image and see whether it's the real Pope or the Donald Trump, or a fake Pope or Donald Trump. It will be also when you try to investigate it, because now at least I go into the internet, and after a few minutes you can find hints or evidences. But when this is when our whole networks, when our all information spaces are really kind of soaked up with all these artificial different realities. I mean, where would you go? It's already now. I'm sure, as as a journalist, you also experience this very often. You don't really know anymore. Where should I really go for if I want to check the truth? So what this necessarily ends up with is that we need new authorities. We need new institutions or maybe people where we can resort to. And when we say, okay, now I really need to know whether this is true or not, who can I ask? And this is, of course, is super dangerous. It's a vacuum. There is because there is nobody. We have demolished many of our instruments of democracy. We have demolished a lot of the understanding of kind of public values, public goods. Like there was, in particular in Europe. I mean, it was for a long time. It was like the BBC. Go to the BBC and you can be sure, this everything will be true there. I mean, it still is, but it's eroding. The importance of this public media, this um, as institutions to look for the truth, is eroding. So where will people go? And we see already it's so easy then to Donald Trump said it, or our chancellor or our president. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The easy solution is always go to the loudest voice and the strongest voice. But we know from history that this is the most dangerous way. And I think it's no longer enough. Until very recent time, we could say, okay, what's necessary is learn maybe to understand how coding works, how software works. Learn to understand how these big media, social media platforms, what is their commercial reality, how they are governed, what are they really interested? Of course, they are interested in selling advertisement to make money. When you study these structures, you can already get a very good guideline to deal with truth and lies. But this kind of cultural techniques will no longer be sufficient because the enormous amount, the tsunami of manipulated or invented facts, this manufactured realities will really be a problem. But then again, there are these examples in history, when book printing came up, you can find the same statements where people say, if you can produce so many books every week, or it takes just 1 week to produce a book, imagine how many books will be there and people will be completely confused. It will be the end of our culture. So I think that's also something we always should be aware that we tend to always see the doomsdays. We should probably more focus on our possibilities and our responsibilities to prevent the doomsdays. And this is what I think for the present time and for the coming years is probably the most important thing for us as individuals as well as society.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, and one thing that you said that was interesting is, or in also in the description of the theme is the rights and obligations of digital citizens and how much the our offline and online worlds are blurring. And you just mentioned that there's the institutions are crumbling, but we don't really have, in my mind, adequate institutions at a global scale. Because even if you look at social media right now, depending on which country you live in, you have different digital rights. Europeans with GDPR have the most digital rights. So even though we're accessing the same platforms, we're coming to it with different digital rights in that regard. And I thought it was actually really interesting that Facebook, and it was actually forward thinking that Facebook established the oversight board, because I thought that was actually, you know, a good approach, except for that it's a derivative of Facebook, and Facebook almost tell like a child telling a parent, like, "This is how you're going to parent me." But in the realm of imaginative institutions, I thought it was an interesting step forward. And OpenAI has a grant out now, or the application just closed, of like, what's novel and innovative ways to regulate AI. But I haven't seen, a global effort to like put together or coming together. How do we want to regulate the internet, or what are the guidelines or institutions that we want? Have you seen anything, or what are your thoughts on, you know, a global effort in
Mhm.
this space from an institutional standpoint?
I mean, there are these two problems. The second one of them is what you mentioned, the global dimension of it. We are so unprepared to deal with topics on the global dimension because we are, and we, when I say we, I mean, like Europe, United States, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, maybe so the rich industrialized small parts of the world, that we are so used that we own this authority of interpretation. We, I mean, we don't always act in the best way, but we would at least know how to do it. This is the kind of, understanding we have for ourselves. So the moment we think about global, we immediately have hierarchies in our mind. We think about the powerful, the rich, the successful, and the poor, and whether we look down at it or whether we, in a kind of paternalizing way, think about them as oh God, these poor people who have nothing to live. As always, and it's super difficult. I mean, I think everybody who is true to him or herself knows that even when you really try, we are so impregnated in our Western culture with this hierarchical perspective that finding global dialogue and really creating global institutions or authorities that we really take serious. I mean, not this kind of globality where we say, okay, we have the money, so we establish now, I don't know, an international courtyard according to our understanding of rules, how to govern climate change or artificial intelligence or something. But really global in a terms that would give everybody an equal chance to get its right and get its perspective. The second thing is very much, I think, the problem we have been discussing so much about how terrible it is to lose privacy with digital world. But what we really have overseen completely is that in this process we completely lose the public. There is this old traditional value of something that is public, that belongs to everybody, the representation of society and public by a government, by a parliament. I mean, everything that is democracy. It became probably so normal and so every day that we just forgot for some time to really think about that democracy, true democracy, liberal democracy, open democracy is something that you really constantly have to work on it. And when it's now, to look at this question of what could be institutions or authorities, I mean, it's really nice that whether it's Facebook, Google, or now OpenAI, I mean, this establishing their ethical boards. But I mean, it's not even a joke because it's such a bad joke. You can only get angry about it. I mean, oversight can only work if it's extra institutional. So in the same way as a government needs oversight, which is the parliament, which is the democratic, these people who are elected by the people, and then they are the parliament and they are there to be the oversight of the government. The same thing is, of course, with companies. I mean, in particular, when it's these super big and powerful companies, I mean, no way that they could really be the authority of oversight. I mean, it's good that they build up these teams as a kind of consultants to the management, as consultant to the developers and inventors and so forth. But we need independent institutions, and I think this is something we also seem to have forgotten. I mean, very often when I talk about this, people tell me, yeah, but how would this be able, with these super big companies, and business would no longer be possible because all of this would. I mean, think of one of the most important business areas, which is food and agriculture. I mean, I'm sure it's pretty the same in the United States than here in Europe. I mean, millions of officers every day swarm out to look at every food stand, at every burger shop, at every supermarket, at every restaurant to make sure that there are certain levels of hygienic measurements done to make sure that when you go there as a guest in the evening in the restaurant or to a food stand in your lunch break or to the supermarket, that you can be basically very sure of that things won't harm you. Think about all the car industry. I mean, how many rules and regulations do you have undergo until you are able to a car that is manufactured in Asia or in the United States to send it to Europe or the other way around? So we have examples of successful businesses, and we could probably add a lot more, where we have a very strong regulation and it's not damaging economy, it's actually supporting the economy. Because at the end, it's all about true trustworthiness. You need to be able to trust that when you enter a supermarket or a food stand or a restaurant and so on, that their prime intent is not just to rip off your money, and they don't care whether you get sick or not. So I think even if it will take some time, we will be able to do this. And I mean, European Union has been um, really at the forefront of this with the GDPR. I mean, we have now big difficulties with the European AI Act that is strongly influenced by the big companies. So we are not very happy with how it went so far. But it's always a
And for
process.
those who for those who aren't familiar with the European AI Act, can you kind of bring everyone up to speed where it was and why you're not happy with it?
How many more hours do we have?
Maybe more the elevator version.
Yeah, I mean, the elevator version is harmless. One can only say, okay, the European Union understood that it's important for two reasons to build up a kind of basic regulations. The one reason, of course, is because Europe is really afraid of losing any chances to compete in the global market. So it's very much about the digital sovereignty of Europe and the European states. And the second one, of course, is to protect people from it. And basically, they were on a very good way to develop this until beginning of the year when ChatGPT, this big boom, changed every discussion and every opinion about AI. And so in many ways, they had to start again. So there is still very interesting things there, I think, that are really going in the right direction, like really regulating the way how face recognition and this kind of biometric identification systems, that they cannot just be applied to any public space. You need a good reason. You need a court to give you the permission to do it. So you cannot just put on cameras and have mass surveillance like it's happening in China in many cities. But in terms of really understanding what has to be regulated, I think we still have this big problem. We don't really see that what we need to regulate is the companies, the people who develop it and who decide about the applications. So it's so much easier to say, well, let's think about some rules how to regulate the technology. But and I think this is quite a big problem, and it would really take much more time to elaborate about it. And I'm not totally negative about it. I mean, it's an important first step. We just cannot now say, okay, fine, it's done. But I think this is clear also to the policymakers in Brussels. And I think it was very important at the end that they made a first draft and the first also set of regulations, so not just a draft anymore, as a starting point. And it will be, of course, endeavor and a challenge for the coming years, no doubt about this.
Yeah. Well, I'm very pro regulation in general, so I'm very curious how it will play out. Um, well, and one thing that I really love about Ars Electronica is that it's art, technology, and society, and that you really focus on the society portion too. Can you share with our listeners and kind of expand how you think about that and looking to the future, how they should all support each other?
Mhm. Well, we have this super lucky, privileged situation that already in 1979, 44 years ago, 2 years before IBM brought the personal computer to the market, 3 years before Sony brought the first CD player to the market. So really, stone age of digital world. There were these clever people, a scientist, an artist, and a journalist who came together to develop a new art program for the city of Linz. And because they were a scientist, a journalist, and an artist, of course, they couldn't really decide so easily should it be a scientific conference, an arts event, or just a big social entertainment. And probably after many weeks of discussing, they said, well, okay, just damn it, let's call it Festival for Art, Technology, and Society. I mean, this is a little bit the funny interpretation of mine of this original. But the very important point is that they really took this serious. They understood that transformation is something that cannot be just guided and driven by one sector. If you need to change things, you need to bring in everybody. And I think this was their main idea to really create this triangle of art, technology, and society. And the great thing here is, of course, that the concept behind this is use, these wonderful qualities of art and artists, their curiosity, their eagerness to look behind the curtain, they're merciless in how they deconstruct things, and of course, the excitement how they create something new out of it. I mean, this is such a wonderful set of qualities that the art brings. To use this to try not only to understand how new technologies are shaping society and vice versa, but to empower people and enable people to become a part of it, to integrate in it. So it was not just the idea to be educational, but to enable people to become creators, participants themselves. And the second great thing is, of course, it put Ars Electronica in a position between the chairs. Because if you are a festival of art, technology, and society, of course, each of these three sectors say, you don't belong to us. You have too much technology. This is what the artist said and the scientist said. I mean, you are not only, professors of universities. So how can you dare to speak about this? And the good thing is when you set up between the chairs, you recognize at a certain point, wow, this is your own territory. And you can build up, so to say, your own perspectives. And in all these decades now, with thousands of artists from all over the world, we have really been able to grow a kind of platform where exactly this way of looking at the world, thinking about the world, is not just a nice add-on, but it's the core of Ars Electronica. So it's not the art festival that is also looking a little bit into science or a scientific conference that is doing some playful things with the artists. This interdisciplinarity, this crossover, however you call it, this is the core of Ars Electronica. And I think this is what makes it so exciting.
Amazing. I love that it started with a journalist, a scientist, and what did you say, an artist that came together for the festival. That's really great. We could speak for hours on this subject, and we barely just scratched the surface with everything that you have going on with the festival and university and prizes. So, uh, before we sign off, what are some things that you want to make sure that our listeners and community know, or either about Ars Electronica or just about AI and art in this moment? And that's kind of a big question for a sign off, but I'll throw it out there.
Well, as I think it's happening quite often with this, super interesting topics of how technology is related with social developments and innovations. Of course, we have wandered out in in many areas. The core, of course, for me and for us Electronica is that it's really extremely valuable to have this artistic perspective on it. I mean, it's not just another conference or another event where people talk about AI. It's an event where you really bring in also the very different perspectives. And one thing, for example, to mention is we have a super interesting program since it's the third time already this year. It's called Festival University. And it's like a summer school for international university at the festival. It's something that we are creating together with a totally new university that is being founded here in Linz. Last year, we had 200 students from more than 80 countries coming together here for 4 weeks. And they come from very diverse backgrounds, from art and design, from engineering, from social sciences, whatsoever. And just to have this experience of people from such different backgrounds coming together, working on the topics of the festival. This is really a very unique thing. It is one of the experiences where it really still makes super sense to travel. I mean, something that we are, of course, discussing very often nowadays, all the people traveling to our place to see the festival. But then again, if we don't create these moments where like-minded people can meet each other and have their experiences and their learnings, then I think we do even more damage than we cannot do all of this just online. I think that's I'm at least based on my age, I'm totally convinced that we need physical social exchange as well. And I think this is a very important part. Another interesting thing to mention, of course, is that the festival also has become the frame for many really wonderful international award activities. So we have an award competition since 1987 for digital art, for artists who work with computers, with new technologies, from computer animation to art projects that work with biotechnology and genetic engineering. Since this prize started, we had, I think, about 80,000 submissions. Only this year, we had 4,200 submissions. There is a huge crowd of international experts who serve as jury members to select the prize-winning project. So you can be pretty sure that some of the best projects that are actually happening right now out there will be at the festival, because not we are so great in doing the festival, but we have this wonderful network of experts who decide these parts of the programs. Another important part for us is really building bridges. The festival has also really become a kind of family event for the local citizens here, for the region. In particular, like Saturday, Sunday, it's we do, for example, a farmers market embedded into the digital art festival. We have a concert night where the symphony orchestra is playing together with digital avant-garde musicians. So it's really about looking into the diversity and giving the diversity a platform where it really can happen. And so the only thing I can wish for that we will have another 44 successful years. And if you can't come this year, I can promise there will be another opportunity next year, but I would recommend to come this year.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm so looking forward to being there in person, and especially hearing more. I'm really curious how the artists are going to explore this theme about truth and multiple truths and the plurality and kind of the nuance and ambiguity in it. Um, well, last question is, since you're so well versed and have been in the space so long of AI and creativity, do you have any predictions and the tech is moving so fast, or wishes as we are in for this moment in time?
Well, I think in particular, it's super important that the artists, the people who are, and it's difficult to describe it like this, but to be on a point, who are the real creators. I mean, we have so many content production nowadays, and many areas of content production, that's obvious, can be replaced by AI. But then I think there is a certain level where it's not just enough to press a few buttons to create something that looks nice or sounds nice. Art always is a process of investigation, of research, of diving deep and going beyond the obvious. And if these people are, embracing AI, I'm totally sure that super new things will come out, and that at the end, I think that's maybe one of the few possibilities we have to mitigate the dangers as well. I mean, one thing, of course, is important to raise the awareness about the difficulties, about the dangers. The other thing is to work hard on examples, on possibilities that show that not only show the benefits, because it sounds immediately like advertisement for it, but that utilize the benefits, utilize it for your own possibilities. And I think this form of critical awareness and creativity coming together as one of the really characteristics of what artists actually are and what artists are doing. This is the really interesting thing. I mean, any other prediction in this area, of course, is super speculation. I'm just pretty sure that artists will find interesting ways working with it, much more interesting ways that we have right now. I think that's also important. At the moment, most of the projects are in a very early stage. It's very early experimentation, which is necessary. And I'm super happy and proud of all the artists who go in this area. And there are great, exciting things already there. But this is the beginning.
Well, I have one more follow-up question because I'd like to ask this question of, have we seen the Citizen Kane of digital art in the same way that Citizen Kane made us really rethink the entire form of cinema? Have we seen an art that's really made us rethink the medium of digital in a way that's transformative?
I mean, I would say immediately yes, but I know then you ask me who is there. You should never do this as a festival organizer and festival curator. So the diplomatic answer is, of course, yes, there are many of them, and also Citizen Kane as one of these movies that really, so to say, showed us. I mean, also to understand what Citizen Kane showed us, we needed, many of these other experiments. And Citizen Kane was, of course, maybe the one of the best well-knowns. But the moment you start to think, what other artists, I mean, just think of, like the French Louis Buñuel and people who really reinvented not only cinema, but created a completely new art form of expression out of it. Of course, commercially less successful. But I think it's the multitude of approaches that we have. And if we have the Citizen Kane, I would be anyway immediately skeptical, because I think, this is too mainstream. This cannot be really.
I
It's
think that's the best
ambiguity that
answer.
we need.
I love it. I love it. Well, I feel like we could talk for hours, but it is such a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's really great to have you on the show, Creativity Squared, and I look forward to meeting you in person in the fall, hopefully.
Yes, thank you very much. It was really enjoyable to talk about our activities, and looking forward to see you in September.
Thank you for spending some time with us today. We're just getting started and would love your support. Subscribe to Creativity Squared on your preferred podcast platform and leave a review. It really helps. And I'd love to hear your feedback. What topics are you thinking about and want to dive into more? I invite you to visit creativitysquared.com to let me know. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter so you can easily stay on top of all the latest news at the intersection of AI and creativity. Because it's so important to support artists, 10% of all revenue Creativity Squared generates will go to ArtsWave, a nationally recognized nonprofit that supports over 100 arts organizations. Become a premium newsletter subscriber or leave a tip on the website to support this project and ArtsWave. And premium newsletter subscribers will receive NFTs of episode cover art and more extras to say thank you for helping bring my dream to life. And a big, big thank you to everyone who's offered their time, energy, and encouragement and support so far. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. This show is produced and made possible by the team at Play Audio Agency. Until next week, keep creating.